Well, since it was first published almost 150 years ago, the World Almanac and Book of Facts has become America's best-selling reference book. It features information on a wide variety of subjects like world events, cultural trends, notable people, and sports feats. It also includes a list of items that have most come to symbolize each year. And this morning, we're taking a look at some of the items featured in the 2015 edition. So joining us now is senior editor of the World Almanac, Sarah Jansen. Now, this is the 2015 edition, but we are talking about the year 2014. Right?
That's correct. What we do with the World Almanac is compile all of the events of 2014 and also all of the information that you in 2015 to stay ahead of the new events.
Right. How difficult is it to whittle down, a whole year, a list of sort of the signature events or symbols?
It's definitely a challenge every year, but it's one that all of the editors embrace. We're constantly following the news, whether it's in newspapers or on Twitter, or, a whole universe of information that we're paying attention to, and then trying to put it in that tiny, tiny book.
Right. So we have a list of 8. They're not the only ones on the list, but these are the 8 ones that we decided to talk about this morning, starting with the biohazard suit.
Right. So in the time capsule, what we're doing is picking a couple of items that just represent the year. And the biohazard suit represents the Ebola epidemic. Huge news crisis in 2014. They're saying it could be tens of thousands dead in the end, but almost 20,000 diagnosed so far. Still going on in West Africa, so we'll see how things turn out in 2015 if they can get the epidemic under control.
Yeah, and I think some of the companies who produce these suits saw a huge spike in their stock prices and so forth, because everywhere people wanted to make sure they had it on hand,
There was a lot of misinformation going around, too, when you first heard about Ebola in the United States. A lot of people weren't really sure what this was, how you could get it. So healthcare workers were obviously the people who were contracting Ebola. They're the ones that needed the suits, but certainly a lot of them were being bought, and they weren't all being bought by healthcare workers.
Yeah, definitely. Another big story for 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 that disappeared. We have not found it yet, and that's the search for the black boxes, right?
The search for the black box was sort of all-consuming for a while, and it's not in the headlines anymore, like you say, but the black box is still out there, presumably, and they are still looking for that and also evidence of where the plane went. Over 240 people were aboard that plane when it went down, and still looking for it, hope to find evidence.
Yeah, I think that story really struck a nerve with a lot of people. The idea of a plane it felt like it just disappeared out of the sky. We couldn't believe that in the time period where we have GPS and stuff like that, that a plane could just not exist anymore.
It just seems so impossible.
Definitely. Digital evidence from 2014's many sports scandals. We're thinking of 2 huge ones, right? Donald Sterling, and then of course the Ray Rice video footage from the casino elevator. So these are sports scandals, but they definitely changed the conversation that people were having about sports in 2014, about how violence is represented and how it's addressed by these sports organizations. The Donald Sterling recording definitely changed the conversation around that team owner, and he ended up selling the franchise, which is a huge impact for, a 30-second recording at the end of the day. And I think, without the recording, Donald Sterling would be in a situation of he said, she said. Without the video evidence with Ray Rice, it would have been a conversation. It would have basically been a story about one athlete, and it became a conversation about how the NFL deals with domestic violence.
Absolutely, and then that ended up having a huge ripple effect during the entire football season, because you then had the Adrian Peterson story. You had all of these teams and all of these, major moneyed organizations finally addressing this very important issue on the front page of the paper instead of, quietly behind the scenes.
Yep, looking at their policies and making adjustments. Okay, you can't talk about 2014 without talking about the Ice Bucket Challenge, whether you love it, whether you're not. I know some people were sort of critical about it, but it had a huge impact.
No matter whether you went outside and dumped ice water on your head, they ended up raising a lot of money with this challenge. Over $100 million for the ALS Foundation, which of course raises money for Lou Gehrig's disease research. I mean, it was a huge, and you can't really be frowning about that.
You definitely cannot. The collection of protest signs, this is something that's sort of emerged in the end of the year, but the protest over Eric Garner, over Michael Brown and Ferguson, that's really had an impact on 2014.
Huge impact, huge conversation, and one that's not going to end, I don't think, with the end of the year.
Yeah.
You're going to see this conversation continue. And we also included, with some of those protest signs, we also included some law enforcement gear, because with those protests came law enforcement either protecting the rights of the protesters or sometimes getting into scrapes with the protesters. Yes. And that was a part of the conversation too in 2014.
Yeah, and we want to leave you with a couple lighter notes. The bat that New York Yankee Derek Jeter used to hit his game-winning single. The end of his career was like a storybook ending, right?
It really was. Yeah. You know, if you're a Yankee fan, he's Captain Crunch. You know, he always comes through in crunch time, and you have a runner on second, and he hits a single, and it's the story of his career in one at-bat.
It is. And Pharrell's happy hat.
And Pharrell's happy hat, that distinctive Vivienne Westwood designed hat that he wore during the Grammy Awards, and it sort of became a phenomenon of its own. It had its own Twitter account, eventually it was auctioned for charity, and now we hear it's in a museum somewhere. So
just a taste of some of the things that represent 2014. Please don't email her saying that she missed out on some stuff. There's plenty of stuff in the 2015 book. Sarah Jansen, senior editor for the World Almanac, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is Up to the Minute.